Welcome to Module 1 of this online course on enhancing trade information portals. This first module will focus on introducing you to the concept of a trade information portal, or TIP, with some definitions and examples. We will also emphasize the underlying challenges in developing a trade information portal, as well as the benefits they can provide if they can be made effective and sustainable, especially for small and medium enterprises and during crises. A TIP is a website designed to help people understand and apply a country's trade regulations. It does so by consolidating all the information on a country's regulations and procedures for imports, exports, and transit from the various ministries in charge of trade control into a publicly accessible and hopefully easy-to-use online repository. There is some mixed terminology to be careful of. International organizations, including the World Bank, usually call this type of portal a Trade Information Portal, TIP, but many countries and regions have created their own terms. For example, ASEAN prefers National Trade Repository, NTR, while others say National Trade Portal, NTP, and the EU has used a number of terms, including Trade Help Desk, Market Access Database, and now Access to Markets Database, in reference to different information portals related to trade. For this course, we will be using the term Trade Information Portal, or TIP, but it is worth being aware that these other terms exist for when you're looking at portals from different regions. Just remember that what we say here largely applies regardless of which terms used to refer to the portal. Now, it would be useful to go through some examples of what trade information portals can look like as of early 2021. This is Tajikistan's portal. One of the main features on many portals is a search function, which returns the trade procedures for some given goods. Here, you can select if you're interested in import, export, or transshipment procedures, and here you can select your goods and country of origin. Let's use importing fertilizer from India as our example. Portals typically provide information on customs procedures, required documents and forms, restrictions and prohibitions, tariffs, and so on. The Tajikistan portal is quite comprehensive when it comes to trade procedures. Another example is Thailand's TIP. Information is organized in tabs at the top of the page, including one for procedures and documentary requirements. The user can select different procedures and some general information will be given, including this interesting flowchart. However, this information is only general, not specific to particular goods. Thailand's TIP has several additional features, such as this repository of relevant administrative and court rulings, which can be searched by organization or commodity classification code. However, while most of these documents are translated into English, some are available only in the local language. There are also a few regional portals, most notably for ASEAN and the EU. The EU call their portal for imports and transshipment the Trade Help Desk. They offer a separate market access database, which assists EU exporters with information on tariffs and import procedures in third country markets, although the EU Commission is currently in the process of combining these two sites into the very comprehensive Access to Markets database. Let's look at this new EU Access to Markets database. There is a search function, like we saw in the Tajikistan portal, but with the additional feature of a code tree to help traders find their products of interest. We may notice that somewhat different information is provided. For example, in addition to tabs on tariffs, rules of origin, and import procedures, the search also prominently displays import statistics and a section on how to read the results. Feel free to look through some TIPs yourself, including that of your own country. Our course guide includes links to many portals, but you may consider trying to search for it yourself. After all, it's important for a TIP to be easy to find. Try terms like Trade Information Portal or Repository, plus your country's name, and see what comes up. While looking at these portals, you may notice they can look quite different to each other, both in the information they provide and in how they present it. In subsequent modules, we will discuss some suggestions for what information and services should be included. Here is a more formal definition of TIPs, provided by the UN CFACT guidelines for establishing a trade information portal. This definition combines two vital perspectives for a successful TIP. First, from the developer's perspective, a TIP is a website that aggregates and publishes all trade-related regulatory information, with a focus being on acquiring all that information from the different agencies that perform import, export, and transit control functions. Second, however, from the user's perspective, a TIP is a website that helps them understand how to conduct trade with a country. The focus here is on being a user-friendly and trustworthy source on what they need to do to meet their regulatory obligations before, during, and after clearing goods through customs. As you will see in our discussion throughout this course, TIPs must keep both these perspectives in mind in order to be successful. Trade information portals are considered an important instrument for trade facilitation. The WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement, Article 1, shown here, already obliges countries to establish a TIP, and most countries by now already have one, at least in theory. The problem is that the quality and sustainability of these portals varies widely. Some have comprehensive information laid out in an intuitive format with regular updates. Most others are not as advanced. Some lack important information, either because it was never added or it was not updated when the regulations changed. Others have inaccuracies or are inconsistent with other official sources, or lack the budget and resources to sustain themselves. And even the more advanced portals do not include all the features one might expect. As a result, many TIPs are currently underutilized by the trading community. The main objective of this course is to provide guidance on how to evaluate an existing TIP and make improvements based, to a large degree, on benchmarking and identifying good practices across many different information portals. A key challenge for TIPs is establishing trust. In order for the TIP to be useful to traders, they must trust that the information provided is of high quality, that it is accurate and comprehensive and up-to-date. Otherwise, they risk incurring penalties for failing to properly comply with their regulatory obligations. But the relevant information comes from a range of sources, including customs, the Ministry for Trade, and various regulatory agencies, which can lead to diffusion of responsibility for managing the portal and make it hard from a governance perspective to compile all the needed information. Often, it is instead provided in different silos, dispersed across several government websites. Even if it were to be compiled, overlapping authorities can lead to inconsistencies or overlapping requirements, which require some centralized conflict resolution mechanism. Moreover, once it is established, a TIP must be sustained, which includes its daily operation, timely updates as procedures change, and continuous improvement as new opportunities emerge. These tasks require strong political leadership to manage the necessary interagency collaboration, including by formally appointing a lead agency with a mandate to coordinate the relevant ministries and resolve or escalate issues, if any, to the right authority. Developing an appropriate governance structure to make TIPs both effective and sustainable is a key issue we will address in this course. However, if TIPs can be made effective and sustainable, they will provide great benefits, especially in terms of making trade more transparent and inclusive. TIPs are, in essence, a transparency project. It is about reducing the time, effort, uncertainty, and cost of communicating regulatory information from the government to traders, and thereby facilitating trade. This can be of particular benefit to smaller businesses that otherwise struggle with the often intimidating process of navigating the regulatory environment and accessing foreign markets. These are also the sectors in which women entrepreneurs are typically concentrated in developing countries, creating an opportunity for governments to meet their sustainable development goals. Another area where TIPs can be especially useful is crisis response. One of the chief challenges encountered during the initial shock of the COVID-19 crisis was that firms struggled to keep up with the rapidly changing trade regulations and procedures at a time when maintaining trade flows was vital to the pandemic response. Countries with pre-existing platforms for communicating with the private sector were noticeably more agile and resilient. Conversely, regulators may find TIPs useful as, in effect, a continuously updating business process analysis of their trade procedures. So not only does the TIP provide transparency to traders, it also gives regulators a good overview of their own aggregated trade procedures, particularly in how the procedures of different agencies interact. This can be used to identify redundancies, bottlenecks, or other inefficiencies, and unlike a typical one-off study, the TIP gets updated, allowing these efficiency gains to be maintained even as practices change. This type of openness can also promote accountability by making the government's regulations readily available for all the citizens to see. As internet adoption continues, the benefits of ensuring regulatory transparency across a digital medium will only increase. However, trade information portals will only become effective instruments for modern trade facilitation strategies if they can be trusted and if they're actually used by traders. This module has introduced you to the basic concept of TIPs and some of the major challenges and opportunities in their improvement. We have discussed the differences in quality that currently exist between different TIPs. Ensuring TIPs become trusted sources of information and remain sustainable over time are key issues. Mastering these challenges is essential for TIPs to increase transparency and facilitate trade as intended. In the next module, we will present a governance framework, which will underpin a process for assessing TIPs and generating recommendations for their improvement.